I was watching another YouTube show a couple of months ago, and it was about, talked about Frank Ellison. Well, Frank Ellison, as some of you may not know, between about 1930, mid-1930s and mid-1950s, he was really the face of model railroading. Frank was a fantastic modeler, lived in New Orleans, and had a magnificent railroad. It was run prototypically. He used to have sessions all the time. And some of us, me included, had opportunities where we could have had an opportunity to visit him. I didn't, and I think many others didn't. And I've always regretted that. The same happened with me and John Allen. I had opportunity in California to visit with him, and I didn't take it. I've always regretted that because I always wanted to meet them and talk to them and see their mannerisms and so forth. And that's what we're trying to accomplish by the modeling lifestyle shows. We're trying to introduce you to people that right now in this part of our 21st century are really fantastic modelers that all of us might want to meet, but few of us may have that real opportunity. So we're hoping that these shows on YouTube that we're producing are going to give you an opportunity to meet some of these really outstanding modelers and be able to ask questions and talk with them if you'd like to. Now, I have to say the only way that you can join us live is on our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling, but it starts at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. And if you'll log into our channel, New Tracks Modeling, then you'll be able to use the chat function and talk with the guest and ask questions and so forth. And I really hope that you'll take that opportunity. So we have a short video about Al Judy that I'd like to run now. Pat?
Join the modeling lifestyle at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on November 17th, where we will feature the modeling lifestyle of Al Judy. Al is an amazing modeler, focusing on ON30 scratch building, weathering, and scenes.
And I hope that you'll be able to join us. Then on December the 1st, we have George Serra. And we're going to be talking about George and the Brickyard Club. Some of you may be familiar with George and the Brickyard Club, others not. But I think it's going to be something that you're not going to want to miss. And that's going to be on December the 1st, on that Thursday evening, again, on YouTube. You've heard me talk about we need help. I'm not going to go into that again this evening. Everybody that watches the show by now knows that we need help. We're not getting volunteers for some reason right now. And I don't know what else to say other than if you like the show and you'd like to see it grow and prosper, we need some help producing them and doing all the hundreds of details each week that are required to try to make it as good and interesting as we possibly can for you. The other thing I want to talk about tonight, though, is our fundraising effort. I want to try to give you a little update about where we are on this and encourage you, if you can help us in some way, to make a contribution to our Patreon account, New Tracks Modeling, to help us try to complete the fundraising that we're trying to do for this year. We have a budget set of about $1,800 for this year. Almost 1,400 of that, 1,000 for the scholarship, and 400 to apply for a 501c3 designation, because everybody so far that has contributed any significant amount of money to us, the first question they ask is, are you a 501c3? And of course, we're not. So that's going to cost us about $400 to make the just for the applications, nothing whatsoever. It's going to have to be done by volunteers. And yes, we need volunteers who are willing to put in a little help to work with the committee that's going to produce the 501c3 application for us. The sooner we get it produced, the sooner we get the designation, and the sooner that we have a slightly easier time trying to raise money for our effort. The rest of the $1,800, the other roughly 400 and some odd dollars, is going to go to pay for the cost of the YouTube, not YouTube, but the Zoom, and for our website. So that's where the money goes, and that's the amount that we're trying to raise, roughly $1,800. So far, as I sit here this evening, we've raised almost $1,200. And for the fairly short amount of time that we've been doing this, I think that's an outstanding achievement for our show. But we need another $600. So if you can see your way clear in some small way to make a contribution to our show on Patreon, we sure would appreciate it, because we got to cover that other $600. And the sooner we cover it, the better I'll sleep at night. Let's put it that way. So if there are any questions, please, my email is jimkello@newtracksmodeling.com. Please just send me an email. But if you can see your way clear, I know times are tough right now with inflation and all the other issues, but we really would appreciate your help if you can help us. The build-alongs coming up, we've got 3 of them starting next week. Hangman Creek dioramas, New Creations, Victorian Railroad buildings, and Darwin Lighting Without Wires. All 3 are starting next week. Details are on our website. You've heard me talk about them considerably, and I think that you're really going to enjoy all 3 of these, because the models are just fantastic. This is the first time that we have done a diorama, so that's unusual for the show, and it's the first time we've tried anything this detail about lighting, particularly lighting without wires. And this is, in my opinion, going to be part of the future of our hobby. So I hope that you're interested, and I hope that you can benefit from it. You're getting discounts from the manufacturers on all of these products, and I hope that you'll want to participate. Then on December the 7th is our next one. It's Berkshire Valley Models, and Richard Rand will be here with Bill Davis, and they're going to be doing one of the Winster House from Colorado. It's a beautiful model. Again, it's on our website, and I encourage you to take a look at it, because they'll be starting that project on December the 7th. So that's our build-alongs coming up. Our next My Bill is scheduled for November the 23rd, next week. And again, I hope that you'll participate in this. I hope that you'll give it a lot of attention. And I hope that you'll want to show some of your models and share them with us, because that's important for our hobby. It's important for the people who are trying to learn skills and techniques to see how you do things and the models that you've constructed and built. So I encourage you to do that. Chris Course is the host for that part of it. And Chris, you want to talk about it a little bit tonight?
Sure, Jim. You there?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't realize I was unmuted. All right. We will go to the share screen, where we will go and share the screen. All right. My build next week, featuring you, November 23rd. I finally got the date fixed on this thing. So to participate, email your photos to me at railrunner130@hotmail.com, and we will go ahead and include your pictures in the slideshow. Be prepared to talk about it. And if you haven't participated before, please send us a a photo of yourself so we can include that for your title page. I think there was another page that Phil wanted me to share, but I don't see it offhand, so I apologize for that. But anyway, like I said, to participate in my build, drop me an email at railrunner130 and make sure you send those pictures and we'll get you on there. Back to you, Jim.
I got one question for you before you run away. Where is the barge?
The barge?
Well,
Oh yeah, the boat. Actually, I was just talking with Greg about that. It is right behind me here. And there we go. In fact, I just sent an email to Dylan about that because I need to get the I'll get it right here yet. See it?
Yeah.
All right. So this is how it'll be displayed at train shows, etc., except hopefully finished, not like this one. But yeah, it's got to have the bucket on there, and the bucket actually needs a little bit of fixing, and also need to put the bumpers on the other one also.
It's gonna be a good looking model.
I hope so. I've asked Greg to take a look at it because I think I painted this one about 4 times. It looks terrible in reality. So I'll probably do another one.
It's something totally different, though. I haven't seen anything like that. So
yeah, I've never even heard of a debris boat before, but
yeah,
it'll be cool.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, now let's start our show. And to start it off, let's start with Hank Primas for the quick tips of this evening. And let me remind everybody, while Hank does these quick tips, he needs all the help he can get in finding quick tips. So if you have a quick tip, please let Hank know so that he can, include it in his presentation sometime when he starts running out of them. But, I think a lot of people like these. That's the kind of feedback that I get. The quick tips and the bits and pieces that Gary does. Modelers like this because these are short segments, but they're things that they probably haven't thought about, or if they have, they weren't sure it would work or not. And for Hank and Gary to take the time to try to show us how to do these and what will work, it's really exciting for me. So Hank, thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, I love doing it. Now let's see if I can get the one up that I have. That's not working.
You're up. Just open yep, there you go.
Okay. Today is a rather very simple one. I came up with this one because I was trying to paint people and I got paint all over myself instead of much on myself as on people. So I just took some alligator clips, straight alligator clips. I drilled some holes in a board, 1x4. I think these are about 1/4-inch holes. And I can stick the alligator clips in the holes, they hold, and I don't get as much paint on myself as I was the first time. So that was an easy one today, a small one, but this is just a scrap piece of board and some alligator clips. You can see that they get used quite often because they're different colors. But these were easier to do than the longer ones, which I had shown before, because you're trying to generally do something small when you're painting HO scale people. So that's it. Anybody have any questions?
It's a simple idea. That really is a simple idea.
That's it.
Thanks so much, Hank. I appreciate it.
No problem.
If it
All
isn't
right.
simple, it's free.
And
Yeah,
get,
it's free.
yes, and we like that. Now let's turn to Gary Shurgold, MMR, for his bits and pieces for the evening. Gary, welcome.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Okay. Tonight, we're going to talk about, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. The show tonight is, come on, there we go. Okay, potential railroad components, everyday object. And welcome to Bits and Pieces tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about sand and stone. And by the way, this is free. If you go around to a construction site and find a nice pile of freshly dug sand that has been, a pile of sand has been sitting for a while, go there and get yourself a bucket. Fill the bucket, take it home, and using screening material, you can sift it. And what you're going to end up producing is a very fine sand. And this is excellent for model railroaders. It can be put out, and as you see, it comes out extremely fine. It's like a very fine, dusty powder. Excellent modeling tool. As you can see, now this road here was all done with this sand. White glue is put down, of course, a little bit of wetting, and the product is sprinkled over the area. And this is the results you can get from that. Here's another view. I'm sorry.
Unbelievable.
Another view of the area. And this is that sand I showed you earlier. And here is a shot of the yard with the same product used in the yard through here all over. So that's one thing. Now, if you are lucky enough to find a big hill of rock, what they were doing is they were redoing the path that is behind me where I live. And they had these piles, piles of stone. It's underlay for the asphalt that was put over them. So what I did, again, I went and I asked the gentleman if I could have a bucket of stone. And what you're really interested in this is you want to get this very loose stuff at the bottom. It's almost like powder and thin rocks. And again, we're going to do exactly the same thing. Get a bucket of this stuff, take it home, and start your process of sifting again. Now, with this process, you're going to end up with a very fine mixture, as you can see here. And you're also going to find very small rocks. You got little larger ones, little smaller ones, and you're going to want to divide this. So this is going to be done into, you can actually get the very fine stuff and the little heavier stuff. And this is what it looks like when it's been sifted. This is the very fine stuff. And it's beautiful granular rock. And it is used, this is the fine stuff over here. And again, we got rock for around road beds or river beds, very fine stuff for river bottoms and things like that, that it can be used on your layout. And it doesn't cost you anything but time. And that's Bits and Pieces for this week, Jim.
And it's free.
It's free.
Gary, thanks so very much. That's great.
You're very welcome.
Well, now I'd like to go back and introduce again Jeffrey Jordan. You may remember Jeffrey was on, I think it was one of the My Bills with Chris, and he was showing us a structure that he built, and he talked about converting windows from 8-pane to 4-pane. And he kept saying, well, you know, it's easy, it's no big deal, but you've got to take your time. And I kept thinking, yeah, right, that doesn't look that easy to me. So I asked Jeff, I said, Jeff, I understand you keep saying it's easy, but how about coming back and showing us just how easy it really is? So that's what he's agreed to do. So this is how Jeffrey can take some of these plastic windows and doors and convert them to different windows and so forth, and the method that he uses to make this, quote, easy. So Jeffrey, thanks so much for coming back and doing this.
It's a pleasure. Let me see if I can launch my presentation here. Yep. I may need some prompting here to get the program, get my presentation launched here. So,
Is it in PowerPoint?
yes, it is, and I'm
Double
to the
click,
window.
double click on the P there. Move your mouse down just a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Are you moving your mouse?
There we
There
are.
you go.
You got it.
Ooh,
Okay. There we are. So tonight I'm fresh out, or was fresh out of window castings. I'm actually in the process of an assignment for a local museum, building an O-scale model of a store that once existed in the community, doesn't exist anymore, and scratch building it just from photographs. And it included numerous windows and doors. And though you may have seen my HO scratch build in the past, where I just scratch built the windows and doors from styrene shapes, and O-scale, they're so much larger, and the castings like Grant Line have so much wonderful detail in them. If I could reuse a Grant Line casting, it would add to the model. And so you start hunting for Grant Line, Tichy, and other castings to see if you can get something that resembles the subject. And in this case, I couldn't. Nobody made windows or doors that fit the size of the subject. So I did something that was new for me, which is I realized that these plastic windows and doors are cast in a very soft, easy to work with plastic. And so I started modifying windows and doors. And so I thought I'd show you tonight one that I actually recently did for the ongoing project, which is a door. And if you want me to come back and show you another window, I have another commission for a second building when this one is finished. So here we go. Here's the building under construction. You can see it's evergreen styrene. And there's the door size. And this is all scaled from the photographs. So I'm not rescaling the building to fit the windows and doors. I'm building the building as close to the prototypical dimensions as I can get it off of the photographs. And so as you can see, the doorway here into a storage area is a bit smaller than the standard door frame. And that's a Grant Line 4-panel door, and that's the frame portion of it. And you can see it doesn't fit. So laid it in place there, got out my scale ruler, and it's a little dark there, but you can see that it's about 4 inches too long. And so that's what I'm going to need to deal with, is that the door, though the width is okay, it's a standard width in this case, the height is wrong, and I need to adjust for that. Incidentally, you can't, well, if you're really enthusiastic, I guess you can cut as much as you want and resize windows and doors extensively, but I try and get something, a window or door that's close, and so I can just make adjustments for it. So here we go. This doorway, we're going to make the first cut to shorten it. And what you can see I've done here is very selectively picked where I was going to cut. I didn't cut up at the top over here. I cut down here because there's a natural seam in the real thing. And so this is a good place. Your seam will easily be hidden. And so you can see I've started a little razor saw cut there. This is the only place where I used a razor saw, because the razor saw actually removes some material and could throw off your dimensions as opposed to a knife. But there's the first cut started, and there it's completed. Notice that I've gotten a nice smooth cut. I've actually dressed up this piece a little bit to make it absolutely smooth, and then glued it in, because this is going to give me the base to size the rest of the door frame. And so there's the door frame, and you can see it's way oversized even after the cut. And so again, measure it. Actually, if I go back for just a moment. So what I did there is I measured and marked right there with a very sharp knife, intentionally measuring a little oversized, because it's easy to take a little bit more off. It's really hard to put some back. So here it is. You can see super sharp knife, carefully slice off at your mark. A great thing I've realized recently is you can get a box of 120 of these super sharp blades from Micromark. And so I no longer worry about running out of blades or pushing on with a blade that isn't quite as sharp as it ought to be. When in doubt, throw it out, put on your next sharp blade. Your work will benefit from it. And so there's the first cut. Come back, and as you can see, it's a tiny bit oversized, about a half an scale inch. I use the fine emery boards and file that down until it's a just perfect fit. File a little, test it, file a little, test it, till it drops in place like that. And there it is. And you can see the seam is virtually invisible, looks like a natural seam. And the other one, you just do the same thing again. You mark it, you take it off, you cut it, you test it, you file it, you test it, you file it, and there it is, drops in. So now that's pretty much the easiest part. There you just got to be careful, measure carefully, cut carefully, leave yourself room for error by filing it down, because if you cut off too much, it's hard to put back. So now here's the door frame back out of the model on the door. And as you can see, this is a 4-panel door, which happened to be the same thing as my prototype. And so I really wanted this casting. And you can see the feature of using the casting rather than scratch building. Notice that it's textured. There are multiple layers. It's really a nice piece. And so it will be a feature. That's the front of the building. This door will be very prominent. And so using this nice casting will really add. And again, you can see there's the measurement in about the 4 inches. However, with the panel here, you don't want to just chop the 4 inches off the bottom. You'll end up with an odd looking door with these panels right at the bottom and the top having a lot of space. So I split it. It's 4 inches. So 2 scale inches down from the top and a mark again. Then with using the same metal straight edge and a sharp blade, slice it off, working slowly, carefully. Again, I did not use a razor saw because it would take out some material and throw off the dimensions. The scalpel doesn't really displace any material. You get exactly the 2 inches you wanted to take off, and you can see that the top of the door looks reasonable. And the next step, make sure, you try and cut as evenly and straightly as you can. But then I took a very fine emery file and made sure it was a really tight, clean, even, level cut. And you can see the other 2 inches sticking off at the bottom there. You do the same thing. You mark off the 2 inches. And here, of course, you've got the advantage that you can just mark right at the bottom of the door frame there, cut it off again with the scalpel and true it up. Again, leave it a little big, file it to get it down to even, and there she is, drops right in. And so that's resized door, matches the prototype very closely. Really happy with how that came out. The window is really not all that different. Again, you have a little bit of an issue with the window because here I was able to take all of the trim off at the bottom here and make the adjustment virtually invisible. With the window, because you've got center panes, you have to keep that the center centered. So you have to cut some off the top and some off of the bottom. And so you are going to get a little seam at the top. Again, cut it as finely and as carefully as you can, but just move the top down and the bottom up, and you shrink your window top for bottom, which is the precedent that I showed you previously. I did not shrink it side to side. Again, you could do that, but at some point you're going to get an awful lot of seams and they're going to begin to show. So you need a casting that's close that you can alter. At some point, too many cuts, maybe back to scratch building again. But that's basically my technique. And this is new to me, though I've been scratch building for quite a while. It never occurred to me that you could just take all of these commercial castings and alter them. And now I've got all kinds of ideas for buying castings and combining them and otherwise altering them, partially scratch building them. It's really opened up the ability to detail structures with windows and doors other than straight scratch building. And these grout line and T-sheet parts are wonderful to work with. They're nice plastic. There's a soft plastic, so they cut easily. They take sanding easily, and really enable me to do a lot of things with the windows and doors. And in the not too distant future, hopefully, you'll see the finished product, that store that I'm working on with its windows and doors installed. I'm in the process of painting it right now. So it won't be next week's my build, but probably before the end of the year, so I can get on to the next one. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Jeff? Well, Jeff, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to show us how simple and easy this is. But now you've got my curiosity raised, and I hope that you'll consider coming back and sharing some more ideas you have about taking some of these castings and doing some crazy things with them, like you mentioned. Because I know you used to scratch build an awful lot of stuff, and if we could start using castings, and you can help us and guide us on how we can do that instead of having to scratch build doors and windows, that'll be a boon to a lot of us. So I really hope that you'll come back and share some more of your secrets with us.
Yep, I think my next store has got 12 pane windows, 6x6, and I don't want to scratch build 6x6s, and so I'm shopping right now for a similar window that I can resize for this store as well. And so that may be the next one that I show you, is how again I take a window and alter it to fit again a specific prototype. And in this case, the building still exists. It's closed, boarded up, but I was able to go out and take precise measurements off of it. And so I know exactly what I'm doing with that one. And so now I'm shopping for windows and doors, though I may end up scratch building some of them because there's just nothing like it. But the 6x6 windows, I hope to do the same thing, to modify an existing casting. And if I find a casting that does that, I'll take some pictures of it and we can show you how to do a window as well.
Fantastic. Just let me know when you're ready.
Will do.
Thanks so much again, Jeff. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Well, now let's take a step back in time to what I remember very, very finely, and that is my local hobby shop. And we're fortunate that we have a hobby shop owner with us this evening, Mark Pendergast. And Mark, I thank you so much for doing this, but trying to introduce us to some local hobby shops and having us get a feel for the issues that hobby shop is having to deal with right now, and how modelers probably are having the same kind of concerns, because anything that we can do to try to keep the hobby shops out there that we have, as far as I'm concerned, I'm all for that. So thank you so much for helping us do that.
No problem, Jim. Glad to be here. I really am. I really believe in this. And tonight I have an interesting guest. It's actually not a hobby shop owner. Decided my last guest, he couldn't make it tonight, so I had a backup, and it's actually one of my customers. Now, this is a young gentleman who came to us probably when he was, 12 years old or so forth. And he's been around for about 10 years, annoying the heck out of us, but he's an avid modeler, and he purchases both on the internet and at brick and mortar stores. So what I wanted to do was kind of look at this from the other side of the door. So hopefully a lot of the shop owners will kind of listen to what Mike has to say about his experiences, good and bad. So I'm going to, talk to him, ask him some questions about what he's had here. So Mike is like I said, Mike has been with us a long time, and he's really been around the block. He's an avid modeler. In fact, in the background, you'll see his model railroad that he's building. So he's definitely, hello, Mike. Glad to see you're here. You cleaned up well.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. So basically, without screwing around anymore, let's get down to it. So Mike, as I just said, I've known you a long time. We're friends, and you're a customer, and you buy from basically all types of mediums, from internet to brick and mortar stores.
Brick and mortar stores, eBay, Facebook, model train shows, everything short of from some dude in a trench coat in an alley. Although if I can't find some Polar Express cars soon, I may turn to that next.
There you go. So one question I want is what's the majority of your purchases? Are they internet or store?
They tend to be more towards the internet, and that's not a knock on any store in particular. My hobbies, or my interests in the hobby, tend to be very niche. I tend to be into logging. I tend to be in the narrow gauge. I tend to be in a lot of stuff that doesn't have a huge presence in stores, but you typically have an easier time finding on the internet. I mean, I found things related to those above items in stores, but I just have better luck on the internet with those.
Okay. So what do you really, when you walk into a store, okay, because obviously we're trying to promote stores, what's one thing that really turns you off when you walk into a store?
If I just feel like a hostile vibe in the room, like I feel like if the place feels a little too clinical, that kind of makes me kind of regress a little bit. Doesn't make me walk out, just makes me think, okay, I feel like if I don't buy something, I'm going to catch an uncomfortable look from the guy behind the counter. And I don't like feeling like I need to buy something. Like sometimes I walk into a model train store because I'm in town for reasons unrelated, and I need to kill time for about 30 minutes. And who knows, maybe that guy has something I want, but I don't know. I need to look.
Right. Okay. And what's one of the best things when you've walked into a store? What's something that just really knocked your socks off when you've walked into a particular store? And you've traveled a little bit, so you've been to a few stores.
I'd say what knocks my socks off is if you have a lot of your trains like on display where I can see what like stacked tons of boxes, although I don't mind picking through those. What I like seeing is like when you have like a glass case, it's got row upon row upon row upon row, which I could just kind of sit there like this, drooling like, ooh, what is my bad purchase, or what is my bad habit purchase this month, or what am I going to be blowing money on this week? Guys, guarantee if I see something like that, good chance I'm going to see something in there. I'm like, that is coming home with me. Yes, it's $400, but it's coming home with me.
Right. Oh boy, what was I? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute. What would you like to see stores in general? Like when you walk into a store, what's something you'd like to see them carry that they're not carrying? Something that you're kind of getting frustrated finding, or something like that.
That's a good one, because like I said, my interests are a little on the niche side, but as far as like finding stuff, I'd love to be able to walk in and see more narrow gauge on the shelf. I'd like to be able to walk in and just see a wider variety of DCC components on the shelf, because I got a lot of DCC projects that I've got going all at once, and it's just sometimes hard for me to find all the parts I want to use when I want to use them, because sometimes the itch just strikes out of nowhere and I want to act on it. I think it's just having product available on the shelf is any amount of product would be nice, because the more I can look through, the more it'll occur to me, like I'm picking through stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, hey, I want to model that on my scene. And I need that. Oh, hey, it's like, I didn't think I needed that, but I could use that. Or they're selling used buildings. I'm like, I just built a neighborhood after piling up a bunch of houses.
Right. Do you think stores do a decent job of representing products, or do you think that's something they could improve on? In other words, like you walk in, stuff you made a mention of just stuff thrown in boxes in a corner, and I've been in stores like that too. Do you think in general stores do a decent job of representing new products or products that are coming out, or do you think they need to improve on that?
I think they could improve upon it. I mean, it's kind of hard to one thing I don't usually see it a lot in stores is, like an ad like from Athearn or from Bowser or for something like, hey, here's what's coming next year. You want one? Order it. Like, I don't really see a lot of stuff being announced in stores. Like, I know in your store, I got that big old giant poster next to the front door of the city of San Francisco from Walters.
Right.
And that could be a heads up to somebody who doesn't go on the internet much and go, hey, I want to order one of those trains because I want to see it going around my layout at 50 miles an hour. So I don't see a lot of product being promoted. I tend to see a lot of posters of stuff that companies have produced, but not a lot of announced stuff coming up. And for a lot of models, including myself, sometimes I didn't realize I wanted something until I saw the ad for it. I'm like, ooh, yes, I want one of those.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. And what do you, as far as a modeler, so you said you buy a lot of narrow gauge. What else are you after? As far as, like, say I walk into a store, what?
Brass logging equipment for one. That tends to be very hit or miss, depending on which stores. The stores that tend to have that, they typically have an already large brass section as it is. So logging usually on a brass category. So usually the stores that have a big brass case as it is.
Right. And that can be tough because, as we know, a lot of the brass is not made anymore. So if you were going to tell a store, if they were talking to some of the manufacturers, what are some things that the stores can bug the manufacturers about, so to speak, or put a, bend their ear about as far as getting some new products to the shelves? What would you like to see this? Okay, Amtrak. Okay,
Amtrak's a big one. I mean, I won't name a company in particular, but there's a couple model train companies that seem to, it's just my opinion, they seem to get their product research from the boomer generation. And those guys do buy a lot of stuff, but that tends to skew towards steam era, transition era, early diesels, the glory days of passenger service. And a lot of the younger guys typically go for more modern stuff, like look what Scale Trains is pumping out. But a big one that often gets missed is Amtrak. Like, a couple companies are convinced Amtrak is just a waste of money to invest in, yet yes, you ask Breckbiel or anybody else, every time they produce Amtrak, gone like that. So Amtrak is a big one that if stores really want to start trying to push more product, get manufacturers to start doing more Amtrak, because that's a lot of guys in my age group tend to latch on to that, especially the more modern, the better. I mean, it's only recently that a lot of modern passenger trains and commuter rails are finally getting manufacturer attention. Like, you look at Atlas is finally putting out Chicago commuter cars, and Athearn's finally putting out Amtrak California cars. And I know of a guy who said that he used to work at Athearn. He said that he's got requests for Amtrak California cars from as far away as Germany, and nobody would touch those with a 10-foot rod for close to a couple decades because they're convinced that it won't sell. Well, they're announcing it, and their pre-orders are through the roof.
Okay, okay? You just touched on something interesting. So a lot of the younger models, what you're kind of telling me, for what I'm hearing from you, is that a lot of the younger models are not really getting recognized for the products they want in the stores. When you walk into stores, you see a lot of steam transition. You're not seeing a lot of the newer stuff that your generation of modelers really wants to see in a store. Is that correct?
That's basically, yeah. I guess that's one point I'm trying to get at. Like, a lot of, like, I've heard the line, the hobby is dying many times. I'm sure all you guys have heard that many times. It's a dead horse at this point. The thing is, the hobby's not so much dying, it's evolving. Yeah, a lot of stuff the older guys are into, or not as many people are into, like the steam, the transition era, early diesels. But the younger guys, they're not interested in that. They're interested in Gevos, they're interested in Amtrak, they're interested in auto racks, twin stacks. Stuff like if I get in my car, go down to like Port Oakland and just sit watching trains go by, that's what guys are into. I'll give you a great example. At a train show last year in Sacramento, I brought my pride and joy is my Amtrak California brass set. Yes, the OMI 5-car one. As even though I'm a logging and narrow gauge guy, I apologize if I go on a bit of a tangent here, but I have a point.
No,
Even
it's
though I'm a
great.
logging and narrow gauge guy, I always wanted one of those 5-car Amtrak California sets because when I was growing up, I didn't have a functioning railroad area. So anytime I'd see a real life functioning train was when I would go on a family trip to the San Francisco East Bay or Sacramento, where I'd see these things running around. And really stuck with me. So I wanted one of those sets because I have fond childhood connections. Well, I bring this set to this train show, and I'm running it around, and I see these two kids. They could not have been younger than 12 or older than 15. They're going bug-eyed watching this thing wandering around. Why? Because that's what they distinctly remember seeing going through their backyards and going across their streets living in Sacramento. These kids are not going to be interested in a shade dragging log cars through the woods. They want modern Amtrak. They want, ES44s. They want like whatever UP's using. So a lot of manufacturers need to kind of start updating their expectations. Yeah, older stuff's still selling, but they could tap a whole new market of younger guys if they would give it the attention it deserves.
Okay, that's great. Because I've seen that. We've seen that with our customer base too. In the store, we're seeing far fewer people looking at the old steam locomotives or the traditional F7 that everybody wanted, and now they're we can't keep the ACEs, the GEVOs, all that kind of stuff. When they come in, they're gone. So you're hitting on that. So anything else you'd like to tell store owners, that good, bad, or ugly?
Well, the one thing I will say, a lot of people complain like the internet kills their business off, and to a degree it does. However, a lot of guys I talk to and come across, they like being able to walk into a store, to put their hands on stuff, to look at it in person, to think about it, ferment on it, and or imagine themselves, and they can't imagine their lives without it. And I think a couple things store owners need to keep in mind is, number one, not everybody who walks into your store is going to buy something. At least not today. Maybe they're going to leave. They're going to leave, remember your store, and then they're going to tell their friends, and the next time they're in, they're going to show up with a boatload of cash to make it rain. Or they're going to tell their friends who will show up with a boatload of cash to make it rain. The other thing I put out is don't be a jerk, and especially don't be a jerk to kids. Because you know where I'm going with this, Mark. For what I'm not going to name any names or locations, but there is one model train store I've been in my travels that I've heard stories about is just nasty towards children. I get it. Children are loud, disruptive, and they break things. But when the kid walks in and isn't even doing anything already, you're like, hey, if he touches anything, you're buying it. Or, hey, keep your hands off stuff. Like, whoa, dude, whoa. Okay, let the kid do something naughty before you lose your crap. And in one case, he chased out a kid who came from a wealthy family. Like, his monthly allowance is more than what my boss pays me, and I'm in a really good trade. And then this kid's parents just took him out and left. I'm like, you just chased dollars out the door, buddy. And my personal experience is, there's one time I was in there just to kill some time and buy a couple things, or just had nothing better to do. And at one point, I asked the person, as they're carrying like a box of stuff towards the back, I said, hey, where's your restroom? I had to take a leak, nothing urgent, and it could have waited a minute. But the sentiment, the contempt I felt coming from this person, just me asking where, and I didn't even stop them. I just, as asking as they were walking by, thinking they'll just, go in the back to the right. The look and feeling I got off this person was like, as if you just washed your car and a bird took a crap on it. Like, whoa, it's like, it could have waited a minute and said, they gave me the key and I go take care of business. But it's like that hostile attitude. That's kind of the stuff I'm getting at. I'm like, if you make me feel like I'm going to get shot at by walking in your store, I'm not going to be wanting to walk in your store. And you can make all kinds of comments about, generations is, more sensitive, snowflake, blah, 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 all the famous buzzwords. Well, the thing is, snowflakes still have lots of cash, and cash that you want them to give you in exchange for a product. So you got to make the environment feel welcoming. I can walk in the Mark store. Anyone can walk in the Mark store and just like, okay, this is a cool place to hang out, BS with the guy behind the counter, and just feel welcome. Other places I walk into, I'm like, it just feels like if I'm not buying something, I should just leave.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate that, Mike. Does anybody else have any questions for Mike?
Mike, do you think that the associations are really doing a good job trying to attract younger modelers into our hobby?
I like to think so, but I don't really have enough information on those to really render an opinion one way or the other. I think I could go on a whole other tangent about trying to keep young guys in the hobby, but the TLDR version, I'd like to say, is that the issue in getting young people in the hobby isn't so much getting them in, it's retention.
And you're a member of the NMRA just like me, correct?
I am
And-
a member of the NMRA.
Right. Do you feel that organization as an organization is helping to promote the hobby with young people?
I'd say 50-50. I'd say, yeah, it is trying to help, but at the same time, they could do more, but it's not like anything they're doing is a detriment.
Right.
It's not like they're pushing anybody away. I just think that's kind of a neutral thing for now. I think the recruiting end of things tends to happen on a much lower, more local level than on a national level. I also think there maybe is a bit of a generational disconnect, but that's my opinion. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Right. Well, so, okay, one last question. As far as a hobby shop, what do you think a hobby shop could do to help promote this hobby with the younger generations? To get them interested?
Basically give them a comfortable, warm, welcoming point of reference. Give them a good, trying to laugh at me for this phrase, good safe space they can go to for advice, for help, for information, to go buy stuff, or if you don't have it, a referral to somebody who might. Or, hey, say I come in and say, hey, I bought this online, but this is doing X, instead of getting your undies in a bunch that they bought online instead of from you. Give them some help, give them some advice, give them some, or point and say, hey, if you want it to work right, there's that thing on the shelf that might work for you.
There you go. Okay.
It's like you got to give them sort of a, because a lot of younger guys, some younger guys have someone in the family who got them into the hobby, but plenty of younger guys, myself included, we're the only one in our house, in our family that's into this. So we really can't turn to anybody else in our immediate surroundings to this. So I gotta reach out to other modelers in the area, and having your store to go to, someone I can springboard ideas off of, someone I can reach out to, or whom I know other people, a club or a group or just a posse of guys spend Friday night drinking beer and talking model trains. I think that could help a lot of younger guys, get in and stay in it, because basically they can get the feeling like they're not alone.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great. So promote a little unity in the hobby and camaraderie.
I think so. And one other point I wanted to make, I know you didn't, this is a bit unsolicited, but one point I wanted to make is I think a lot of people would honestly prefer brick and mortar over online, but the problem is brick and mortar stores have become the exception, not the rule. So from where I'm sitting talking to you, I can think of at least 5 model train stores in a 2-hour driving radius. Poggy's Trains, Loose Caboose in Napa, Railroad Hobbies in Sacramento, Just Trains in Concord, the Train Shop in Santa Clara, 6 if you count the 2 shelves of stuff at the Ace Hardware in Berkeley, and there was the one in Lodi, but that guy closed 2 years ago.
Yep.
But I have access to model train stores that I can drive. But if I'm living in the wilds of eastern Montana, there's model train stores a day and a half drive. I'm not going shopping there. I'm just going to go on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or Train World, which is basically the Amazon of model trains, and I'm just going to order it there. And I know you have to have a certain population density in order to support a model train store, but as cows to the sound, that's not really my problem. My problem is I don't have access to a model train store if I'm living in some of these BFE locations.
That is very true. Very true. All right. Anybody else have any questions for Mike? I really appreciate your input, Mike, because this is the kind of things that hobby shops need to hear. And, another shop can preach it all you want, but when you open the door and allow the customer like yourself to come in and give their side of the story, I think that's invaluable information to pass on, because there's always things to think about as a store owner, how to maximize our profit and our longevity. And it's answers like what you've given us really help push it in the right direction.
Yeah, and whenever I'm whenever I travel to a location, one of the first things I look up is model train stores near me.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Oh, no, as far as which model NMRA division I'm in the PCR, Pacific Coast region or Redwood Empire division. Anyway, like I was saying, I try and hit a model train store. I was up in northern Idaho with my girlfriend for her family's reunion, and we were going to go into Spokane since it's like a 20-minute drive just to kill time on one day. And for no reason, I can't remember why, but I just looked up model train store Spokane thinking, what are the odds? Well, turns out there was a model train store in Spokane that was open on the day we were going to be looking. I'm like, hey, sweetheart, can we go check this out for an hour or two? And I have an awesome girlfriend who tolerates my hobby on top of my other shenanigans. Believe me, that woman deserves a medal.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, Mark's met her. He knows. Anyway,
you scored a pretty good locomotive there, didn't you? You scored a pretty good locomotive.
Yes, I did. I went in there, and you remember earlier saying like, I didn't know I wanted it until I saw it sitting on the shelf. I was just gonna go in just to kill time, take a look, say maybe that guy has one or two things I've been looking for forever and can't find. But what he has sitting, one of the things he has sitting on the shelf is a beautiful Spokane, Portland, Seattle RS3 by Bowser. I'm not an SPNS guy, but I do find the rail kind of interesting. But I'm like, I want to take this home. For one reason is I thought, hey, how cool would it be that I got a Spokane, Portland, Seattle engine in Spokane, of all places. I was hoping when I was going to hit a model train store in Portland the next day, long story, and hope I could pick one up for Portland, but that did not happen. But either way, I didn't know I wanted it until I saw it sitting on the store. And as a result, that I walked out with a train, and that guy got $170 of my cash. So, and he was, can I plug that guy's store name on here?
Oh yeah, no problem. Oh yeah.
Valley Trains and Electronics in Spokane Valley. Really neat store. Very, very friendly owner. Great selection of products. If you're in town, drop by. He's really, really cool. Really awesome dude. If I had to, really, if I ever a chance to, I'll stop by his store again. And yeah, that SPNS engine was a great purchase. It's actually one of my best engines I've ever bought. That thing will pull down the drywall. It's smooth, running, quiet. Great job, Bowser. So yeah, I was killing time, saw him on a train store, and spent money there.
No, that's great. In fact, I'm going to try to have him on in one of the future episodes. So anyway, okay. Any other questions for Mike? Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate your input. It goes a long way. And I'm sure. Yeah, no problem.
And thank you for having me.
No sweat. I'm glad you made it.
Mike, thanks, Jim. Really appreciate it. And Mark, I can't thank you enough for bringing Mike to our attention. That was really an interesting segment. So thanks so much.
No problem. I just figured a little bit different twist and gives us something to think about from the other side of the gate.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, sir.
No problem. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Well, now let's turn to our panel for this evening. And our panel for this evening is going to be talking about traction. Why traction? A lot of people don't know much about traction. A lot of people haven't heard about traction. So I thought, well, we've done the different scales, N scale, S scale, O scale. Let's talk about traction and expose the world to the traction modeling that's available today, what its future may be, and what it's like to be a traction modeler. So we've got 4 great people on our panel tonight, and I really do appreciate all of them for taking their time. I'm going to introduce them one at a time, and as I introduce them, I'd like for them to tell us a little bit about themselves and how they got involved with traction modeling. So the first one I'd like to introduce is Martin Breckbiel MMR. You all have seen Martin build models on our show before, and Martin's a longtime traction modeler. So Martin, welcome. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm not so sure when I started becoming a traction modeler officially. Uh, that was more along the lines of it being thrust upon me. I always liked trolleys. I liked to ride them. Used to visit various museums and started building some kits, Labelle kits, the venerable Labelle kits, which by the way are still out there. But then decided I was going to go off and scratch build interesting cars, because I found all kinds of unusual looking cars in the traction universe, which I just thought were fun to try and build. So let's see, I've been writing the traction column for O-Scale Trains magazine since 2009. I guess that's where I became labeled as a traction modeler, because I made the mistake of agreeing to write it. Hence the having it thrust upon me. So I've written almost 80 columns on traction modeling in the last 13 years. And I don't know how many models I've built. There's nothing like a deadline and having a column to write to motivate you to build a model. So yeah, so I tend to not build passenger equipment, more freight and maintenance of way related trolley and traction equipment. So that's about where I am on it. So
Well, Martin, appreciate you being here this evening, and stay with us. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Ed Minas. And Ed is a traction modeler. Ed, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you. I think you're muted, Ed.
So
there you are.
There you go.
okay. Well, I grew up in the Chicagoland area, and I rode the South Shore as a very, very small child, and I always really, really enjoyed it a great deal. And so I started getting interested in traction when I lived in the Pacific Northwest. And the reason that I got interested in it is I love passenger cars and passenger trains. My parents took me on a train to Colorado one time, and then, like I said, I rode the South Shore all the time, so it really got me enthused about passengers. But I never have lived in a house that had enough room for a big layout. But I still was very committed to passenger stuff. So I've been in and out of it for about 25 years. And the reason I say that is when I lived in the Pacific Northwest, there was very little traction modeling going on at all. And so I kind of tried to dabble around a little bit and build some O-scale traction cars, but had no one to mentor me. So I gave up and sold the whole thing. And then when I moved to Detroit, I found the DUR club, which was really helpful, and I got my interest got rekindled.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Well, now let me introduce another person from the Detroit area, Fred Cosgrove. And I've known Fred for quite a while. And Fred also is a member of the DUR in Detroit. So Fred, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been into traction about as long as I can remember. I think I got into it because my grandparents did own a car, and to go anywhere, we took the bus. And usually if we went to Detroit, we took the bus only as far as 6 Mile Road, where we could catch a streetcar on downtown on Woodward Avenue. So I thought the streetcar was great. Of course, at the time we were riding them, they were all PCCs. So they take off from the light, they leave the traffic behind. So I thought they were great. Could never understand why they got rid of them. My grandma kept saying, well, they'll be back. They'll be back. Well, I kept expecting every year they'd be back, and they never came back. So kind of lost interest in the whole item of traction. until the mid-70s when they announced they were saving the last 2 work cars in Detroit, created the Michigan Transit Museum. So it turns out I bumped into a couple of the members. They invited me down to Shoemaker and St. Jean where the cars were being stored. And we ran those cars back and forth on a couple of 100 feet of track using what is called a stinger. And of course, I got hooked on it. And what really sank the hook in my mouth, they offered to take me to Chicago. There, we caught the South Shore. I haven't been right since. So, you want to see a big smile on my face? Put me on a South Shore car going along. My smile goes from ear to ear then. So, and of course, I found out there was different traction cars in Chicago, the Owl cars, different models, different series. And my goodness, there's model kits available in that. So it just grew and grew. So I'm sorry, I declare myself official traction nut.
Thank you. Thanks, Fred. And next, I'd like to introduce you to somebody else that I've known for quite a while, Dylan Lambert. Dylan, tell us about your involvement a little bit with traction.
Well, right off the bat, I blame Martin. Basically, yeah, you're a bad influence. What can I say? So basically, I started in narrow gauge, and I still the main thing I do. And about a year and a half ago at this point, I would think it was the first Harrisburg show that we had after COVID in 21. Martin and I were talking about mechanisms, and he brought up the idea of traction mechanisms and power trucks. And he's like, there might be something there. So I'm like, can I do it? So I was staying with a friend of mine, Kevin, down there, who helps organize the show. So I sit down at the dining room table in his house that night. I'm punching up stuff in the computer. I'm playing with other things. And then I'm realizing, wait, I actually can do it. I already have 90% of what I need. It's basically designing the stuff to hold the mechanical components. I'm like, oh, I can do this. So over the course of the following year, I basically designed my own wheels, the tires I have for the first batch of power trucks I put out, which were for Corgi PCCs. At first, I wanted to look at a Brill 27E truck, but then I had trouble visualizing the drawings. So then when I call a friend of mine, Rob Brogel, down at the Connecticut Trolley Museum, who's the president down there. I've known him since before he was the president. I said, hey, what are the odds you have one there that I could at least, I don't know, steal a picture of? And then I tell him what I'm doing. He puts me in contact with Justin Chase. Justin calls me, and then it was basically off to the races because Justin helped fill in another bunch of blanks that I didn't have access to at that point. So first kits went out, I'd like to say about 6 months ago. I haven't done another batch yet because I've basically been looking at, okay, how do we improve for the next batch? How can I make it better and easier, not just for the builder, because I basically tried to keep it screwdriver assembly as close as possible because I don't have time to physically assemble every single power truck. But then also, how can I make it easier for me to build? Like, so I can send out more of them. What are things that I can basically to make it simple, robust, and cost effective, which was my biggest thing, is how do I make sure the average Joe Schmo can not only, they're happy with what they buy, but they're not breaking the bank either, because then they may want to come back and buy more, if I'm being perfectly honest. So that's been going well. They've been the power trucks have been tortured. And some of the feedback that's gone into that torture has actually gone into some improvements that I'm planning for the next batch: revised wheels, modifications to the power pickup, i.e. me designing a press to pre-bend the strips before I send them out. So then everything's all nice and uniform, stuff like that. And then what else can I do that's out there? Like, I've got a Corgi safety car sitting on my shelf that I designed a truck for. It's just waiting to be put together. For instance, because it was basically lengthen the power truck I already drew up by, I think it was like 10 millimeters or something like that. It was already really close. And then, of course, the frames on it. They're all 3D printed frames. A lot of people don't, and even I didn't realize at the time that 3D printing's got to the point where you could use it for a mechanism frame where it's actually holding everything where it needs to be reliably. That is impressive because 5 years ago, the technology just wasn't there. So I'm basically trying to apply new technology to old problems. And again, it's Martin's fault.
Thanks so much, Bill. And it's nice to know that there's some manufacturers in the hobby that are trying to do some new technology, bring some new technology into to traction. But let me ask you this, guys. What is traction modeling? Is traction modeling building a traction layout? Or is traction modeling building something you might say is a bumper car that runs from one end to the other of a piece of track on a regular model railroad? What is traction modeling today?
Be all of those things very easily. I know people who are doing nothing but a traction layout, and I know some modelers who have a trolley or subway line that's a feature, really, that's running constantly on their and automatically on their layout, while the rest of the layout is, diesels and steam. It's something. It can be something different for different people. It's open for whatever you want to do. You can be, completely religious and dedicated to a specific traction modeling prototype, or it could be something that's just a component of your layout.
Well, I hear a lot of people talk about traction, but I'm a new modeler, or I'm thinking about traction, but I don't know much about it. So why should I become a traction modeler? I've heard some people say, well, I got involved with traction because of this, that, and the other thing. But what's the advantage to me? What makes traction modeling something that should draw me, that pulls me into becoming a traction modeler versus another kind of model railroad?
Wow.
Well, I think
it takes
it's,
up less
space.
Yeah.
I think that's number one key issue, the space, and the radius is so much smaller. You don't need a big area to run a trolley layout. And the other nice thing is you don't need a bunch of cars. All you need is one car, and that can be the whole layout. So, and you're allowed to get into freight operation. So it covers every base around.
So really, you can be a regular model railroader, but just be a trolley modeler.
Yeah. People always seem to have a perception of a trolley carrying people from point to point, while in fact traction encompasses every aspect of model railroading.
Gotcha. So what's the main drawback? I get involved in it, or I think I'm going to get involved with it, and then I start finding out more about it. What's the main drawback to keep me out of becoming a traction modeler?
The overhead.
Bingo.
That's usually the main deal. The thing is, though, if you go run subway cars, they're usually third rail, and you can fake that very well. So you still can have traction without overhead that way.
Are you challenging me to make working third rail shoes?
Absolutely. You're not done yet.
The sad part here is that would be simple to do. all you need is a phosphor bronze strip off the bottom of a shoe, because the third rail is going to hide most of your strip.
So
And then
you'll
you just have it bent up so it's in contact with the third rail.
So you'll have it next week.
I could probably have it in 5 minutes from the scraps sitting here, to be honest.
Even better.
Assuming my brain doesn't fry by the end of tonight, but yeah.
So
we'll
I've
work
operated on a gentleman in the Ontario areas layout, which is an overhead with traction, and it was modeled after the mid 50s to early 60s, a line that ran between Lake Erie and I want to say Waterloo, Stratford area. And it was everything from passenger to freight. And he did an amazing job because it is such a different thing to operate a layout that is not, that does rely on that overhead. And anybody who comes and sees it, it's such a different thing for them that it just opens up a whole new interest for a lot of people as to what is this, why is this, how is this type thing. So I think it's an amazing thing, but the overhead is definitely something that is a very time consuming to get right. So
I think the basic thing on the overhead is knowing how to handle it before you start hanging it. Basically, you hang it over the center of the straight track, you're doing fine. You get into the curves, you have to bring it in towards the inside of the radius to keep the pole and that lined up with the overhead. And the other thing is positioning of the frogs. And usually what I do is I run my longest car through and mark where the trolley comes off. And then I run my shortest car through, mark where it goes off, and then I split the difference. And that's where I put the frog. So it sounds terrible. It looks terribly hard, but you get going, it goes along real good. And the biggest thing is, just like anything, giving it a try.
Yeah, you got to jump in.
Well, if I wanted to jump in, what scale would I jump in? I mean, is there something about traction modeling that dictates this is the scale you need to be in if you're really going to get involved with it?
Well, I think me and Martin would be biased to O scale for obvious reasons.
I think we're all O scale modelers right here, more or less. But there's lots of, in fact, there's even more stuff available in HO than as per usual. It's all out there. It may take some work on some of it because it's not the newest stuff on the planet, but availability is pretty good on secondary market in both. Well, it certainly is. It's fine in HO. O scale is a little more challenging.
But there's really no reason why any scale modeler can't be a traction modeler, is there?
Oh no, there's nothing about the scale that precludes being a traction modeler. So I have no idea what's available in S scale,
right?
Or N, but it doesn't. It shouldn't stop you. I mean, anything you need, you can probably find and or build.
Well, and I got you. So where can I get information about traction?
Oh, wow.
Where can I get help? Where can I find out about the standards that I need to know in order to build traction, to build overhead, for example? Where do I go for help?
Well, one of the places for information is on the website is Trolleyville, which is a good one to go to. And they keep you informed on the latest product and what's happening in the traction scene and that. So that's a real good site. And then East Penn
Yep.
Has some real good specs, both for HO and O scale. So you can pick those up there real good, and that'll help you along. And of course, the best thing is to find a group that models traction, get with them, and they should be able to help you out really good, giving you the finer ways of getting around things. So everybody has their own technique for hanging overhead, but they all seem like they work.
What about the NMRA? Does the NMRA have standards for traction?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would be another possible source to go to.
Yep.
Yeah, they just don't go into the detailing of hanging the wire and that. They give you the specs, how high, what size, and all this. But far as the actual construction, you're better off with like East Penn or a modeling group.
Well, Fred, I think you're the one that mentioned a few minutes ago space. How much space do I need for a traction layout? And again, all of you all, I think, are O-scalers. How much space do I have to have for a O-scale traction layout compared to a regular O-scale layout?
Well, I was up in Milwaukee for the Train Fest this weekend, and I saw a O-scale operation in like a box almost, and it was like 18 inches square, and it had a siding. Yep. So it don't take much, because O-scale car is able to handle a better radius than a HO car or N-scale car.
So we talk 9, 10 inches? What kind of radius you talking about?
Oh, it had to be only, gee, I would say maybe 6 inches.
Okay.
So yeah, and it ran around. I saw the car operating around in this box like.
Yeah.
And
kitchen table size is very doable.
Oh yeah.
It's very doable. And yeah. my regular layout, which runs steam, it's an 11 by 16 room. That's also my traction layout. It's the same track. I just pull everything off and swap out everything.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it doesn't really matter because Cumberland Valley had a overhead wire branch. So I lie to myself and pretend.
Remember, you're the master of the railroad.
Yeah. Well, that was a weird overhead system. It was double wire offset from off the center.
Do I have to be a scratch builder to be a traction modeler? In other words, do I have to build most of the stuff?
If you want a particular road, a particular car, you may have to, because there's so many different varieties in the traction world of cars. Supposedly, the PCC was going to be the standard of the industry. And there's so many varieties in the PCC, each line wanted their own particular item to it. So it was like, even though it was a standard, you can't find a standard car.
Yeah, that does seem to be part of the problem. And there's the diversity of rolling stock, freight motors, passenger cars. It's enormous. That's actually one of the attractive aspects of traction is the diversity is hard to imagine how many variations are possible. When I did that CERA freight trailer, the box trailer, the standard car, which has 16 versions. Basic versions. You want to get into specifics, it probably has 32 or 64. So much for the word standard. So yeah, you may end up, if you want specific cars, well, this is not unlike any other type of model railroading. If you really want a specific box car, odds are you're going to have to do something to modify an existing car to get there. Will you have to scratch build it entirely for traction? Maybe. I don't know I guess we're going to get to this, is depending on the scale, new products aren't really common. It's limits. But the nice, what's interesting though, to flip that around, is 3D printing is opening up all kinds of possibilities and diversity of those cars that you can't get otherwise. You flip that the other way, of course, they're still $200 plus. Well, 185 to 300, somewhere in that range. You're looking at a drive unit for what, another 150. Underbody, interior, exterior details. You know, it starts to add up. It's 3D printing is not going to make it cheaper. It's merely going to make it available.
Right.
You know, so that's not the shortcut to getting a lessen the pain of the wallet being pried open with a crowbar. It's still going to have to happen, and you're still going to have to do some work. But you know, I've been watching the 3D printing in O-scale of cars for the last, oh gosh, it's been 7 or 8 years now. It's been going on, and it keeps going and getting better. You know, as the technology improves, the quality improves, the ability to get unique products improves. Less and less building. You may have to not do so much scratch building, but just redetailing. Now that may be a bigger source problem, is getting, where do you get detail parts?
That was going to be my next question. Are the detail parts out there for traction?
Well, there's Q-Car still in existence. I don't know for how much longer. And of course, then we can always rely on Dylan for everything else.
Yeah,
So,
I'm pretty good.
We're going to throw Dylan under the bus real fast.
Yeah. To be fair, I've seen Q-Cars trucks for years. So, of course, I am in Massachusetts. So I've been to the Bay State Model Railroad Museum in Rosendale. I know some of the people there. Very nice group. And I've seen Quentin's trucks, and they're honestly pieces of excellent craftsmanship. So, of course, no one lasts forever. There will come a day that I'm not around, or I'm retired, or whatever. I'm still young. I've got at least 60 years. So you make of that what you will. But it always comes down to, how can we not only keep doing it, how can we do it better? So as an outgrowth on this, one of the things I've been fiddling with, which again, spare time lately has been fun. I've been working on another power truck, this one for a doodlebug, right? Based off of the similar ideas and some of the principles from the PCC truck. Now, using a totally different gear set, way higher gear ratio. But even with the gear ratio I've got in the trucks now, I did the math. I'm like, okay, my stall force is, like, to stall this out, is sitting around 18 foot-pounds of torque. So your average corgi is like 1 pound. So already it's like, okay, so it works. We know it moves it, but what sort of abuse can it take? How can we make it better? What applications are you going to need a second truck for, or do you need another gear, or do you need another gear setup? One of the issues I've had, one, of course, outside of time, as Jim knows and likes joking, hey, are you in jail yet? A lot. A week doesn't go by that I don't hear that question. But it's also testing it, making sure it works right. And again, assembling it. I've got the parts here ready to go. I just got to make, for the doodlebug, I got to make the shaft adapters, because I need to make longer ones. So I got to make them out of 2 pieces. But otherwise, it's ready to go. And then once that's done, put it together, send it to the guy who I've been working on it with, so he can torture it and see what sort of abuse it could take. Because same deal, when I did the math there, of course, once you throw in a 44-to-1 gear ratio, your stall torque, that what it will take to stop that truck, goes way up. And at the same time, you run into the factor of, where do you get parts? I'm lucky that I have a source of motors that not only are small, but are powerful. And finding out where they came from, I'm just going to say this, guys with tattoo guns, I didn't realize that that size of a motor put out that much torque. And there were bigger ones that put out even more. So I'm trying to figure out, where do I get those bigger ones? Because then you could do that much more with the truck. in that size of a package. But most of this came out of mechanisms. The question of mechanisms that us ON30 guys had, and Martin, of course, pointed out. Traction guys have a similar question of how do you make it work? ON30 guys, which I've been ON30 for however many years now, I've lost track. For a long time, we were lucky that we could grab an HO scale mechanism and modify it, and it's pretty good. Traction guys, how many brass models have come in that were unpowered that are really nice looking?
Most of them.
Yeah, most of them that are really nice looking, but how do you power it? Because it was designed to either sit on a shelf or in a display case. I couldn't tell you how many times Justin and I have had that conversation when we've talked about traction and stuff. I mean, he's got models of most of the stuff in the Connecticut Trolley Museum collection because, hey, he volunteers there. And he's like, I'd want to be able to have a display one day to say, these are the models we have in our collection. So even if it's in a barn somewhere and nobody can see it, hey, this is what it looks like. This is what it is. And this is what it'll look like when we're done working on it or when you see it out one day, which is a good idea. I like it. But it's also, again, how do you power it? Like you look at some of Q-Car's stuff and with some models, what sort of surgery do you have to do to get it to fit? Now, for that reliability, yes, but your average Joey bag of donuts, I'm just going to say, look at me on that one. Because how easy is it for someone who's never done it before to make those modifications to get it to fit? And then it sits right. So one of the things Justin pointed out with me is when he first did it, when he was trying to make the supports to mount the truck to, he noticed on one side it was off by like half a degree. And him being a perfectionist, he's like, I screwed that up. I ripped it all out and redid it. But how many people have never done that, look at that and are daunted by it? If you could do it in such a way where it's just a screw and a nut and you really don't have to do any surgery, it solves a lot of that problem for not just beginners, but people who've done it for years. And what does that do for that beginner? They were able to do that project, be successful with it, and then you can figure out down the road, okay, what else can I do? You develop confidence, you start thinking, gears start turning, and you're modeling. You need a place to start, and even the experts need something that's easy sometimes because, let's be honest, sometimes easy is the better way to do it. Just my 2 cents on it from the perspective of someone designing mechanisms.
Dylan, that's why people like you are so vital, in my opinion, for the future of the hobby. Because you're exactly right. There's too many people that have no idea how to take and convert some of these things to where they will operate good. Let me go back and talk about overhead wire a minute.
Wow.
It's not just hanging wire. But you gotta get the wire. You gotta figure out how to make the poles or buy the poles. You got how far apart they have to. All of these kind of details. It just seems to me it's kind of daunting for somebody that's never done it before to hang wire. I mean, is that your experience?
Well, I can certainly speak for myself. I think it's very daunting, and I would agree with you. But I mean, I've talked with Fred, I've talked with Martin, I've talked with Dylan, and so all these people are helpful, and I think that's what you have to kind of do is meet other people that know what's going on and pick their brain a bit. I mean, like I said, I was into it in Seattle, and then I abandoned it because I couldn't find anybody to answer any questions, and nobody was doing it. So I think it is daunting, but I think it's worth it. I've found so much pleasure in learning. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed is looking at the history, learning what's going on, and trying it. And yeah, I don't expect to succeed right off the bat in anything that I'm doing. So, it's a learning process.
I think a lot of the supplies you need for it are actually available too. I don't think it's a challenge as to the materials, wire, all the little castings and bits and bobs and poles. A lot of that's available. As far as I know, all of it is. So I don't, sorry?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's available. Jason's Brass Poles sells a lot of these parts. Brian Weissman.
Yeah,
so he sells
Jim Rivers.
Well, I don't know that he's still in business.
Yeah,
he is. Okay.
Yeah, he was at the West Penn meet.
Okay, so the next, you can find a lot of this stuff. It's out there. It's actually pretty available now. And I think getting together with other people who have gone before you to learn how to do what appears to be tricky to you, and so they will reveal to you, no, you're just holding it upside down, and you need to put the soldering iron here as opposed to there. All of a sudden, the light bulb goes on, and you know, oh, this is a lot easier than I thought it was. So, but it's one of those things. It's you have to find the community. And
I would agree with that. I mean, there's a Facebook page, for example, that's pretty active in traction modeling, and I think it is. I mean, to be honest, I think it's difficult, but I also think it's worth it. I mean, I think once you kind of get your network of people and get your network of who supplies what, it's going to be more difficult than going down to your hobby store and buying a train and some section of track and stuff. But personally, I think it's worth it because I like learning new things.
Well, one of the things that is troubling is that, like the club in Detroit, that is in effect going out of business. I agree with you that that's necessary to be able to find a community or find people that have done it, that know how to do it to help you. But if the clubs that are in existence today can't stay in business, that to me is a really serious situation for trolleys.
Well,
I would agree with you.
I think it's a problem for all aspects of model railroad. It's not just trolleys. I mean, the Baltimore club lost their lease and had to relocate. I mean, this happens. If you don't own your space, the odds are you're not going to be there eventually.
Yeah. I got
it. And you worry about overhead wire. Well, you had to find somebody to teach you how to hand lay track. You need to be taught how to do everything. This all doesn't just magically leap out of the back of your brain and land on the layout in front of you as a creation. So there's usually people along the way that say, yeah, you got to do this, because if you don't, you're going to have a problem. And how do you know that? Because I got taught to avoid the problem 20 years before you. Some of this stuff just gets handed down. Some of it's very basic and fundamental. Well, because hand laying track hasn't changed within my lifetime, and probably 50 years before. Hanging overhead wire. It's maybe you got better brass castings to solder to and better looking poles, but the technique and the idea and the concepts haven't really changed.
It's a little bit like restoring an old car. Say I was to go out and buy a Stanley steamer. I mean, where are the people that are restoring Stanley steamers? Well, they're few and far between, but but if you're committed to it, then part of the journey, in my opinion, is learning about it and finding the people that know what they're doing,
Which is part of the fun. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
And generally they're more than willing to share their knowledge.
Yeah. Who is promoting traction hobbies right now? I mean, is there an organization? Is there a group? What promotion is traction as part of a model railroading community? Who's promoting it?
Well, I think Martin is with the O Scale magazine for one thing.
Well, yeah, I'll admit to that. And in fact, before I took over the column, the owner publisher at the time, I had sent out an email to a couple of us. He wanted to discontinue 3 or 4 columns from the magazine, and I very strongly told him, don't discontinue Traction, because there is no other in-print publication that has a regular feature of Traction. It simply doesn't exist elsewhere. All the other Traction magazines have dried up and blown away.
Right.
So once a month, well, once every issue, you're going to get a page or 3 in O Scale trains. Okay, so that's limited to O Scale, but it's nothing I do is at scale specific in that column.
Well, and I'll be honest, the first thing I turn to when I get my O Scale magazine is the Traction page. So
that's embarrassing. Okay.
Well, I like the magazine, but that is my favorite column. So
okay, well, I hope to not disappoint in the future. How's that? You set a high bar for me to.
Well, I was trying to figure out how I could get the installments that you've done in the past.
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are ways to do that. But yeah, there's not a lot of in-print Traction. It sparingly shows up in all the other model railroading literature.
Yeah.
I would say the East Penn Club does a great job of promoting it with their was it every 3 years they meet?
Every 2.
Every two. Up in generally it's been up in Allentown, Pennsylvania for the last couple of times.
I'll be there again. Yeah.
Okay. I haven't been to it for a while, but you see it scattered about, but there's no, as far as I know, there's no real organization with a mission statement to promote it.
Yeah, I got you.
So
let me ask you this: what's the future? Where look down the road 5 years or so. Where is Traction modeling going?
Well,
I'm really glad you asked, because I was just thinking about this, and I'm thinking, excuse me, Martin, but
go ahead.
I wonder if it's going to really come back with a vengeance. And the reason I say that may be really far-fetched, but you look at the lines that, the inner city lines that are being developed. I think in the future, we're going to see more of it, whether it's overhead, I don't know, but I think you're going to see more commuter type, interurban cars. And, to me, yeah, we could look at it and say it's kind of bleak, but on the other hand, I'm not sure that it is. I mean, there may be a lot of people that really get excited about it as we move into the more mass transit.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, listen, this has been interesting, and I appreciate everybody's comments. Anybody have any final words they'd like to make about Traction?
I think, like with everything right now, Traction, narrow gauge, O scale, HO, whatever we want to look at, what's really changing is how we make things. When someone like me can design a mechanism, sell a bunch of them, and actually be successful with it to the point where it's like, okay, it's worth keep doing it. But we're not talking on scales of, say, Bachmann or Atlas, where they buy 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 at a time. Then that just means that there is opportunity. Not you need if you can learn how to make a mechanism. The biggest thing with that mechanism is not just motors and gears. Is your interaction proper? Like, is your center distance? Are you doing the right center distance? So a lot of the material I've dealt with, nylon, I love it because it's durable. It doesn't warp unless you take a blowtorch to it, at which point it melts. But a lot of things melt when you take a blowtorch to it. You have technology now that is at a point where when I started tossing around the idea of I want to make ON30 kits, almost 5 years ago now, that I didn't have back then. Especially at a point where it's cost effective. At the same time, if you could draw it on a computer and your production, in essence, takes up the space of a flash drive that you plug into a device, the potential that just not only does it make it easier to produce, it makes it easier to, it just makes the whole process easier. Production, assembly, everything. Because what happens if you need a spare part? Well, you don't need to have rows upon rows of shelves with spare parts sitting on them. You could have your fittings, and then if you need something spare, you can make it relatively easily, relatively cheaply, and relatively quickly. Like, what's your spin up time? Like, what's my spin up time to do a 3D printed part, to order it from the people who do my prints for me, the nylon stuff specifically? I press a button after I've already drawn it. And I could do that time and time and time again. And then it shows up to me to the spec that I designed it to. No need, no sprues, no nothing. And it does what's expected of it.
I think that's the way the hobby is go is 3D printing. And we'll be able basically to order what kind of a car we want. And I think actually the hobby will be better for it. I know it will. And I'm sure model railroading will be heading that way as well.
Think about the variety that it gives us.
Yes.
Think about the variety the 3D printing gives us.
Yep.
What's something I've heard tossed around in narrow gauge circle? McKean cars.
Oh yeah.
The wedge front.
Right.
The wedge front doodle bug in essence. Well, who made a model of a McKean car for one? Not many people did, and really any scales, because they were a McKean is historically relevant.
Precision Scale did it.
Right, but outside of Precision Scale.
Ken Kidder.
Right, but not outside of Kidder and Precision, not many people did it, right?
How about the 3D printed one in my hand?
Exactly, and I think I know who did that. That's, wait, the back of that's cut off, so whose is that?
It's 3 pieces. Because
so that's someone else who did theirs. But then that brings you to another point. When brass used to be the standard for high detail, whereas today I can print something with detail pretty much approaching brass quality. Yeah, brass still has a role to play, and you can't beat metal as far as durability and longevity. But from a perspective of, if you want your average Joe to have a really nice model that's cost effective, 3D printing is getting to the point that eventually I could print something like a coach eventually, and you could sell it as a kit for cost comparable to, say, Ready to Run. And it's, again, screw and glue, like the old All Nation kits, whether it be the NW2s, the F units, the 10-wheelers or the Atlantics, if you want to get into it. Think about it. Those were screwdriver assembly and a little bit of super glue and then your paint.
Yep.
That's essentially what we can get back to. And the reality, here's the opportunities there. And of course, with how many people from, say, my generation, or even people who are a little bit older than me now, that get computer design and can just crank it out, you realize how much we can actually make that hasn't been made before. You want that one-off New York, Westchester, and Boston, whatever the commuter line that ran out of Boston that was taken up in the 30s. It was an all-electric line. They had these funky-looking, almost looked like Stillwell coaches. I think they were actually based off those, but these weird steel arch window coaches. As multiple units, you can make those. You want to really get creative. If you want to make that weird Delaware and Hudson super experimental 280 compound high pressure whatever, because they fiddled around with that a lot. Well, if you have the drawings and you have the CAD file, you could do it. And you could do it a lot easier than it would be to build it from scratch or try and find someone who built one, because it's one of those things that's esoteric and good luck seeing it. You look at traction, double-ended PCCs. Those were rare birds, and I can think of maybe one or two double-ended PCC models. What Martin's holding up there, which that looks like that's the parlor car that's up in Seashore, isn't it?
This is the wind splitter kit that All Nations sells. It's 3D printed.
Ooh, I missed that altogether.
Now I haven't gotten it assembled and reviewed in the magazine yet.
But it makes it so much easier to do it cost effectively and easy to assemble.
Yeah. The only issue with that kit, of course, is you get a body to put together, but okay.
No power truck.
Well, no. And no underbody details and no interior details and no exterior details. So you're still on the hook for all that stuff. So there's your market niche to dive into.
Well, I may or may not have some interior seat designs that I can just start cranking out in bulk. You guys should see my computer. I've just got like designs that I've had in the can for over a year now that I just haven't had time to really prototype yet.
Speaking of which, where's that drive for my coal motor?
That's right.
That's right. I got to remind you.
We were trying to work on the wheelbase on that, weren't we? That's Martin. Feel free to reach for the computer and hit me because I've been busier than I know what to do with.
That's a rabbit hole we don't need to go down.
I know. That's why I pushed him into it.
I got to thank all of you so much for coming here tonight. I think we've learned a lot about what traction modeling is all about from you, and I can't thank you for sharing your information with us.
It's fun.
Absolutely, it is.
It is.
I have more fun with it than I do with just about everything else, because the creativity aspect of it is just open-ended.
I would agree with that.
It's a real thrill to hang the wire and run the first trolley through it and have the pole stay on the wire. It is a really great thrill. So I've been a traction modeler for a lot of years, and what you're saying just it drives home to me why I got into it and why I love it so much. But thank you so much again, guys. I really do appreciate all your help tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fun to do.
So with that said, that's basically our show for this evening. I do want to encourage you to go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe so that you'll be able to join us live on our Zoom channel. You'll get the login links by email. I also want to encourage you to go to our YouTube channel. We have now on our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling, we have over 750 videos that we've produced since we started doing these a little bit over 2.5 years ago now. We've done them every Wednesday since then. It's amazing the kind of information that we have on the videos that we've been able to accumulate over that period of time. So I encourage you and hope that you'll go to our channel and take a look at it and subscribe to it. Because again, our Thursday night shows, Modeling Lifestyle, the only way that you can see them live is by our YouTube channel. And if you subscribe to the channel, then you'll get the advance notice about it and who's going to be on it and so forth. And lastly, I hope you'll contribute to our Patreon account a little bit of money so that we can keep this going and meet our goals for fundraising and be able to offer the scholarship. Scholarship to me is really something important because it shows what a group of modelers that aren't really an organization, that really aren't any more than just a bunch of volunteers who got together and raised some money to try to help somebody with their college education. That to me is important. So if you can support us, we sure would appreciate it. And with that said, Pat, if we could run the caboose video, then we can sign off for this evening. Well, thank you so much for being here this evening. Hope you'll join us again next Wednesday. And until then, happy modeling.